What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well today. And it's been a little while, so I want to check in with the list of Seattle Seahawks top 30 visits so far. There's been several updates to the list since we last discussed it, although I'll tell you, not as many as I might have thought. And for the last few days now, it feels like the Seahawks have been kind of frozen. Haven't really heard a lot in the top 30 visits category. So I do think that we're going to see a surge in the coming days, but I want to go ahead and make a video about this now. I pulled up this article from Yahoo Sports. It is, to my knowledge, the most recent data here. This video is being sponsored by Prize Picks. More on them a little bit later. But real quick, before we get into this, some people might have been wondering about yesterday. Brandon of the Hawks Nest got sick yesterday, and he asked to reschedule the video, or excuse me, the stream to today. So, to my knowledge, as of me making this video right now, early Friday morning, we are going to do our show today at noon. Maybe we move it if he still ends up not feeling too well. I know he did do a show last night, but that show was with like 3 or 4 other people, and it would have been really hard to move because of that. Whereas our show is just 2 guys, so it's a little bit easier to reschedule. So I don't know. If he doesn't feel good, then we might push it off again. But to my knowledge, we are going to be talking about the edge rusher class in the show today. Should be going live at about noon. So hope to see you guys there. Okay, so I don't remember who the first few visits were exactly. I don't remember which ones are old and which ones are new. So I'm just going to go through this list one by one. To my knowledge, this is the most recent data. So first is LSU safety AJ Halsley. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Oh, I gave away the list. Okay, well, whatever. So yeah, AJ Halsley of LSU, the safety. I talked about him a little bit ago. Halsley, good safety, one of the best safeties in this class. And I could see some interest there. I do think that he would be a decent fit for this team. I can see why the team is interested. And safety is kind of the low-key position here, right? Safety is kind of the position where you might have a higher pick than you expected expended on it, because this safety room is shallow, and it may not be staying in its current form for much longer. We might be looking at a situation where the safeties are completely flipped over as soon as next season. So AJ Halsley, visit. Chris Johnson, I know we already talked about this one. Chris Johnson, this was one of our first visits. San Diego State cornerback. I've talked about him a lot already, but you guys know. Chris Johnson would be a great fit for this defense. Chris Johnson would be a great fit for what the Seahawks do. He fits a need, obviously, at cornerback. There's a lot to love with Chris Johnson. Zone corner, good speed, good athlete, good production in college. He might be the most idealized fit of any corner that we could get realistically at 32. So, Chris Johnson, that's a great meeting. And you can see that he is the first of 4 corners we've met so far. So we are definitely focusing on that position. Do you like sports? If you do, then the best way to make them even better and more exciting is using Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players' projections and build lineups with a few taps. Whatever sport you're into, Prize Picks gives you a fun way to stay locked in while you're watching. I've had a great time using Prize Picks so far. It makes this daily fantasy thing so easy and fun, and it even makes watching the games way more exciting. And with the cool social feeds feature, you can share lineups with your friends and even follow partners to tail or fade their picks. Obviously, we're in the NFL offseason right now, but we've got basketball, baseball, hockey, all kinds of other stuff, so don't be afraid to test things out in whatever sport clicks with you. You can even pick multiple sports in the same lineup and sweat everything at once. And don't forget about team picks, where you can pick winners, spreads, and totals on any major game. So, download Prize Picks, America's #1 sports app. And don't forget, code HMA, that is HMA, gives you $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. And remember, always gamble responsibly. Andre Fuller, and this is a corner I didn't talk about when I was talking about corners in the draft, but I am going to loop back around and talk about him now because obviously, if we're meeting with him, there's at least something there that we're interested in. So, yeah, I will be talking about Andre Fuller in a future video after I finish my run through of the draft. So keep an eye out for that. But I know a little bit about him. I will admit I wasn't overly into what I saw, and I don't know if he's really a good fit, but you need special teamers too. And one thing to keep in mind is that sometimes teams will use top 30 visits on guys they're thinking about as UDFAs. They've done this before. Sometimes you take a look at a guy and you kind of want to earmark him for UDFA, so you make it more likely that he chooses you because he can obviously choose his destination to an extent if he's a undrafted free agent. So Andre Fuller was a visit. We also had Dalen Everett. I believe that's a new one, and that's also a really good one. I talked about Dalen Everett in the videos earlier, I think last week, and talked about him on the stream with Brandon as well. And we both like him a lot. We think there's a lot going on there that we're into. We think it's a good fit. There's a lot to like with Dalen Everett, and it doesn't surprise me at all that the Seahawks are looking at him because you look at it, you might be able to get him in the middle of day 3. For whatever reason, the big board seemed to have him kind of down there. We both thought he was a day 2 guy. Me and Brandon both thought that. So if the Seahawks value Everett heavily, even if they take him at the back end of the 3rd, I'm okay with that. I think there's a lot to like with Dalen Everett. So cool that we're zeroed in there. We have Jalen Kilgore here. They list him here as a cornerback. I talked about him with the safeties. A lot of places list him as a safety. Either way, though, Jalen Kilgore, intriguing prospect, admittedly. I'm not a huge fan because there are some coverage concerns with him. He was heavily targeted in recent seasons. But again, this is a guy who's probably going to be a day 3 pick. And when you're talking about day 3 picks, there are going to be issues. And Kilgore does bring a lot of good things to the table. And maybe you're just looking at him as a special teamer. Maybe you're thinking, hey, he can give us some safety stuff and some cornerback stuff. We like that flexibility. That's why we value it so much. It's not unfathomable. So those are your 4 cornerbacks we've met with so far. We have met with a couple running backs. They're both guys that I did not talk about in my initial pass through. I may have to do something about that. The thing is, these are both relatively lesser known running backs. Coleman Bennett of Kennesaw State and Chip Trayanum of Toledo. So another Toledo guy that we're taking a look at here, I guess. But neither of those guys, to my knowledge, are widely expected to get drafted. So we are probably talking about UDFAs here. Maybe Chip can sneak into the 7th round, but I don't think Coleman could. I think that's a lot to ask. So those 2 guys, kind of low stakes here, to be perfectly honest, but I think I will probably loop back around and talk about them at the end of this process because I'm going to have time anyway. And those are the 2 running backs we've met. Remember, the only other running back we've met with is Jonah Coleman, who we did not have to use a top 30 visit on because it was local. But so far, the 2 running backs that we've actually kind of zeroed in on beyond Coleman are Bennett and Trayanum. And that has to mean something. I'm not saying it means that we don't like the other guys. In fact, there's a lot of evidence to lead us to believe we really like Jadarian Price. But those are the 2 guys that we've actually had in the building. And I believe the most recent combine visit was Zion Young, who I gave to the Seahawks in my mock draft yesterday morning, because I do think there's some mutual interest there. And I know that there's some off the field stuff with Zion Young now, and I don't know a ton about that, admittedly, so that may change my perception. But in terms of the football player that Zion Young is, I think he is just what we need if we're going to take edge in the 1st round. Okay, so that is all we got. And to my the Zion Young thing was days ago. I'm a little bit surprised we haven't gotten more stuff over the last few days. So the Seattle Seahawks seem to be a little bit peaceful right now, but I'm sure they're going to use most, if not all, of their top 30 visits at some point. So anticipate a flood of visits in the near future here. Okay, so I will see you guys later. Hopefully streaming today at noon. Gonna talk about edge rushers. If not, then we'll do it whenever he feels up to it. Okay. See you guys later. Go Hawks. See you soon.